Hello, this is Cynthia Douthit with the Jewish Christian Studies Center, and I want to share with you a little bit of what I learned today on a Zoom call out of Israel. We know that the situation is escalating in Israel, and many of you have seen my post on Facebook where I have been posting oftentimes as the rocket attacks are coming in. And I will list maybe how many are coming in, like in the last 2 minutes, there have been 20, and then I'll put no, 21, 22. It changed just as I was typing. And they really have been hammering the area around Gaza, as well as shooting rockets toward Jerusalem and to Tel Aviv area. And they are just really walking these rockets around some of these major cities. And they even tried to take out the Ben Gurion airport. And so we have seen where airlines have canceled flights in to Israel. The picture behind me, you can see these are some of the pictures that are coming out of Israel, that the attacks that are taking place, the rocket attacks. And one of the things that they have noticed that is happening this time, because it's nothing new. Ever so many years, Hamas starts shooting rockets out of Gaza and trying to rattle their sabers, so to speak. But this has been different. This has come on the heels of Ramadan, the holy month for the Muslims, and it escalated on Jerusalem Day. And this is really when we started seeing some of the clashes. But it's nothing new, except that this time Hamas seems very well organized. They are very well armed. We suspect, obviously, that it is Iran, as well as maybe some other countries that are helping them. But they are well armed, and they're getting their rockets to areas that they have normally not reached in the past. And again, this is nothing new. Hamas does this ever so often, but it's really troublesome this time, because it's not just the rockets coming out of Gaza that is causing a problem, but we're seeing it spill over into the communities between the Arabs and the Jews that have lived side by side. They've worked together, their children have played together, they're next door neighbors. But this is really causing a division within Israel that has not done so in the past. So it's really escalating to a new level. We've seen where mobs have gone down into Israeli cities, and they have burned the synagogues, and they have attacked Jewish boys, young men walking home. And we see also that there was an Arab lynching of a Jewish man. He was 37 years old, and he left behind a wife and 4 children. And he was going down to try to persuade his students to not engage. But what happened to him was a lynching, and rocks being thrown at him, and him being basically beaten to death. They would not allow the police and the ambulance to get to him. And eventually they did, and by the time they got him to the hospital, he had died basically from a head injury. So we're seeing that this is escalating to a different level, that it's not just rockets that Hamas is sending out of Gaza, but the communities are getting involved as well, and it's people who have lived beside each other for years. Now, the word Hamas in Hebrew means violence. It means to take by violence, to rob or destroy. And the first time we see the word Hamas is in the Bible in Genesis 6:11. And basically it says the earth was filled with Hamas. The earth was filled with violence. So if you don't know that story, you may want to go back and look at Genesis 6 and see what was taking place just before this happened. And obviously, it talks a lot about evil and how the world was filled, the earth was filled with Hamas. Back to this idea of what was taking place just before this escalation that we have seen coming out of Gaza. The month of Ramadan, it is a holy month on the Muslim calendar, and the ending of this just kind of coincided with Jerusalem Day, and that just kind of helped spark things along. And also Hamas was going to have an election May 22nd, and some are really trying to say that this is what the problem was, but there's a little more involved into it. Hamas was going to have an election on May 22nd, but the election was shut down by Hamas. And Hamas wanted to be and wants to be in the Palestinian politics. And so we see a play for power here coming now as a power to show the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, and you can see the map behind me, Ramallah, and then you can see Jerusalem. And so Ramallah's government regards themselves as the sole legitimate government of the Palestinian National Authority. But the problem is Gaza government considers themselves the sole legitimate government power of the Palestinian National Authority. So we see that Hamas is trying to get leverage in the Arab Muslim world. They are flexing their muscles, so to speak, and they are really trying to show that, you know, they are the power, that they are willing to take on this struggle, and that they want control of this Palestinian National Authority. So the power struggle as to who is the main torchbearer against Israel and the Jews is being played out with Hamas and Habas. So this is really what was going on, because Habas was trying to shut down this May 22nd election. So how are these arms and these missile parts getting into Gaza? Well, they're being smuggled in, and they're also making parts. You know, we've got the internet now, and people can just kind of email instructions back and forth, and they're smuggling these in. And we can see that Hamas has thanked Iran many, many times. So we know who one of the initial backers is of this, this attack that is being launched against Israel in such a strong fashion, this idea of being the torchbearer against Israel and making a name for themselves. You know, the question is, will we see Hezbollah in the north? And as I was setting in on this Zoom call with this information, this was their question. And they said prayerfully, well, they didn't say prayerfully, I wrote down prayerfully no, but they said, will we see Hezbollah in the north? Now, we don't know that it's Hezbollah, but after I got off of the Zoom call, I saw where they had a report out of Israel where rockets were launched from Lebanon, but they went out into the sea. They did not land in Israel. So we see some different players here. Things are starting to escalate. And of course, we can look at that and say, well, yes, we can read the Bible. We know what God has set forth. Prophecy tells us the different things that are going to take place. So I will say this, be ready. You know, we stand with Israel. We pray for our Jewish brothers and sisters. We also pray for the Arabs. They need to know who the true Messiah is, the true Savior. So Hamas, as we look at this, Hamas needs to lose. This is a problem. The rockets from Gaza, you know, they're going to the south. They're going to Jerusalem, they're going to Tel Aviv, and as I said, they tried to take out Ben Gurion Airport. Now let me see if I can get a different map here. I've got it behind me and I never know which way to move. Okay, here we go. Jerusalem, you can see where Jerusalem is. And most of these rockets, not all, but tonight they have been coming in, and last night, most of them were in what we refer to as southern Israel, Beersheba. For those that went on the 2018 tour, they were pounded last night and pounded today 2 and 3 times, north, south, east, west of Beersheba. We see that many of these places that they are hitting in this southern area, they are small towns as well as kibbutz and moshavs. So I'm going to do a video about some of these places so you can understand the difference of some of these towns and areas as to what different groups of people are in there. So we see that Hamas is really targeting those that are very close to them. I have my theories on that, but I won't go into that. But it is Hamas that has provoked this fight. And here's another map that you can see where Sderot, many of these places behind me, I would try to point them out, but I'd be like a funny weather girl, you know, pointing in the wrong place. But we can see the Gaza Strip and how many of these places, Ashkelon all the way up, they are being targeted. And then they will stop hammering them for a while and then maybe branch out and shoot toward the rocket attacks toward Tel Aviv. But Hamas is the one who has provoked this fight. And we know that Israel needs to respond in a firm manner, and I believe that they are. At this point, we know that Benjamin Netanyahu had not been able to form a government, and the president of Israel, they have a prime minister and a president, and the president was going to allow the other group to see if they could form a government. And so they've decided that this is not the time to be doing that. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is still forming, or he still is in charge, and we need to pray for him to have wisdom and discernment and for them to work together, for Israel to be united in this show of force against Hamas. So Hamas is also watching to see if the United States is going to stand with Israel. And I hope and pray that we do. The media in the United States is very slanted. They do not tell the truth they do not tell the truth. I'll leave it at that. They do not tell the truth when it comes to Israel, the Jewish people. They often try to switch the wordings. I noticed in one of the pieces that I was reading the other day, it said that the police were clashing with the protesters. And I'm thinking, no, it's the protesters clashing with the police. In Israel, on the Temple Mount, in the various places in Israel, if they weren't protesting, if they weren't trying to cause problems, there wouldn't be this clash with the police. So the media in the US is slanting the truth of the events of Israel over the past few days. So I encourage you to not believe everything that you're hearing. And I'm trying to double check everything that I hear also. But we know that the rocket attack alerts, they've been sounding throughout yesterday, last night, all during the evening. They started up again today. They were really hammering again before I started recording this. And right now I'm having no red alerts coming in from Israel, but that's the way they work. They'll hammer for a while and then they'll have a little bit of respite. The people come out of the bomb shelters, they go back in their house, and then it starts all over again. We really need to pray for the Jewish people, the people in Israel. Just think of the harm, how this is traumatizing to the children, to hear these red alerts going off, the sirens going off, and having to be rushed to the bomb shelters. Some of you may have seen a picture that I had posted on my Facebook page. It was a playground, and it looked like this big, huge caterpillar. But what it really was and is, it's a bomb shelter, because when the sirens go off, they only have seconds to get there. And I was thinking to myself, a young mother, 2, 3, 4 children, and you're watching them play on the playground and the sirens go off, the rocket alert. How fast could you scoop up several little children and try to get into a bomb shelter? But it's on the playground. The kids grow up with this, so they know when they hear the siren where to go. Isn't that a sad thing? We need to pray for Israel, and the United States needs to stand with Israel. I hope you'll stay with me on my Facebook page to see the latest as it comes in, as I try to keep you up to date with the different places that are having the rocket attacks. They're not just stopping with the cities or the industrial ports, but they're also targeting education centers, colleges, and a boarding school for the young people to come and learn agriculture. They will stop at nothing. We need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for the peace of Israel, and pray for our Jewish brothers and sisters. Shalom, shalom.